Chapter 30. Winding Up. Lydia and her chicken had transported the whole group, including the egg which held Aloria Rakison, to the MBI headquarters. Commandant Gretzky had had to abandon another cigar and sent a runner to invite the director to join them. Director Harizanis was an impeccably dressed warlock. He was also tanned, grizzled, and scarred. His appearance was of someone who had spent years fighting formidable foes and had been promoted to a desk job, which was both a relief and an occasional frustration. He had listened, at first sceptically, to Tally's report of the events surrounding the pursuit and capture of Aloria Rakison and the involvement of Captain Charles. Commandant Gretzky had added that Tally had sent him word that they had captured Charles. Gretzky had transferred him to a cell. A look passed between Gretzky and Tally, which the director did not miss. He said nothing. At the end of the account, which had left out Lydia's transformation into a witch and her received powers, the director looked at each of them in turn before speaking. There seem to be a number of points which need clarification. Try not to be overly creative in your report, Agent Dexter. Am I to assume that the use of magical eggs is standard practice for the British auras? Harry grimaced. No, Director. We used a magical chicken for that, which is why the cage is egg-shaped. Director Harizanis fixed Harry with a glare which had made many a dark wizard and MBI agent quail in the past. Harry stood his ground. And you, Agent Tallulah Dexter, you seem to have bent several rules and procedures well beyond their breaking point, while helping foreign agents working outside their jurisdiction, all in the presence of muggles. And a chicken, Ambrose added for completeness. Harizanis turned his glare on Ambrose. Ambrose smiled his most winsome smile in return. The director heaved an immense sigh. Agent Dexter, you have behaved deplorably and commendably. I have people to answer to for this. Your report will show that you found out about this due to your suspicions about Captain Charles. It will show that you reported the information to your commandant. It will show that Gretzky authorized you to contact Hedora Potter because of the Hogwarts connection, and that a small team of British auras advised and assisted you. There will be no mention of muggles, nor of chickens. I hope all that makes writing the report enough to give you the same headache you have given me. Additionally, your behavior will be punished by your receiving a commendation and a promotion. I'm tempted to promote you to a permanent desk job. Unfortunately for me, and for the rulebook, you're too damn good an agent to lose from fieldwork. As for you, Gretzky, I'm confiscating those cigars. This is a non-smoking building, you are aware? Now, could all foreign nationals please say your goodbyes and make your way home? I assume you have some way of getting home. We arrived by biplane, sir, Harry informed him. We can leave the same way. Ah, yes, Director Harizanis smiled wryly. Captain Treadle and his unscheduled, unannounced flight. Please send him my regards. I'm tempted to ask you to remind him of the illegality of his operation, but he already knows and isn't going to start caring any time soon. Please, don't let us detain you all any longer. Director, Harry began, about our jurisdiction, Hedora, our prisoner. You may apply through the established channels for access in order to interview said prisoner. I can assure you such a request will be welcomed. Harry nodded. Thank you, Director. Call me Costas, Harry. I have a feeling there may be difficult times ahead, and we need to, let's say, re-establish our relationship in a slightly less underhanded way. The sooner the better. The director smiled broadly. Harry grinned back. Tally and Toby travelled back to Salem with their friends. To Lydia's delight, they used a portkey, authorised by Commandant Gretzky. Harry broke the coin Pelicus had given him to let their pilot know they were ready to return. They sought out their invisible limousine, which was still parked where they had left it barely a day before. The two MBI agents got into the car with them, and they set off back to the airfield at a more sedate pace. The car seemed to know there was no rush. Almost as soon as they were installed in the comfortable interior, Lydia, Toby, and Ron all started to drift off to sleep. The chicken settled down in Lydia's lap, fluffed its feathers out, and tucked its head in. Harry could not blame them. It had been an exhausting time. Harry, Tally, Ambrose addressed them. I would like to take the opportunity while the others slumber to address Director Harizonis' comment. Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that, Ambrose. Harry sounded deadly serious. Your talk with Eloria wasn't just talk, was it? There was an element of trying to distract and unsettle her, but the general proposition that she was but a pawn in another's chess set seems all too plausible. The director appears to have latched onto that fact with no prompting. He's a seasoned field agent and a fantastically shrewd guy, Tally told them. You're pretty shrewd yourself, Ambrose. You took the wider view when we were all down in the details trying to survive. I find the prospect of imminent death can help focus the mind, Ambrose smiled, especially when one is casting around for things to talk about, to delay the onset of the aforementioned imminent death. I don't suppose all your research with Draco suggests who or what might be behind all this? Ambrose sighed. Harry, were I to hazard at guesses from what the Professor and I read, it would merely be figures from folk tales and legends from around the world. I suspect your efforts, Harry, should first focus on those who Eloria had stirred into action. I imagine there are others who will continue what she has begun. Harry, Tally interjected, I'll do what I can, our end. I'm guessing Eloria and Charles won't be the only ones involved. Will Harizonis and Gretzky allow you to do that? Tally smiled. They'll realise it's better to keep it between as few people as possible, even if I have to persuade them. Harry put his hand on hers. Thanks, Tally. It helps to know we have you and Toby on our side. Tally blushed so much that she was unable to speak. Or possibly only Toby, Ambrose observed, if you succumb to the Herculean effort of writing that report to the director's satisfaction. They laughed, but all three then sat in pensive silence until the car pulled up by the gates of the airfield. As they were stepping away from the limousine, they heard a sudden burst of engine noise from the runway. Pelicus and his Vimy had arrived. In a round of thanks and farewells and hugs, they prepared to take their leave. They passed the chicken from person to person to avoid her being crushed in all the hugging. At last the travellers stepped up into the aircraft, and, with a short roar from the engines, it disappeared. The two agents smiled as they watched the obliviated airfield manager wander uncertainly back to the buildings over the far side of the airstrip. That was Harry Potter, Tally squealed. Okay, sis, said Toby wearily. Get it out of your system. Ah! She shrieked, and they both fell about in fits of relieved laughter. I'm delighted to see you back again, Minerva. Dumbledore's portrait twinkled. Many of the other portraits were smiling. Some appeared to be wearing party attire. And are you, Albus? The newly restored head teacher of Hogwarts replied. I never held with the idea of having an American, of all things, running our school. It's time to put things back to rights. I'm beginning to feel sorry for the students already, said Ron in an aside to Harry. Thank you for your opinion, Mr. Weasley. Please keep any further opinions to yourself, McGonagall scolded, as she lowered herself into the head teacher's traditional seat. The decor of the room had already been returned to its previous style, or perhaps had never changed, if Professor Lee had truly never been able to gain access. It was much the same as in Dumbledore's time, but with a slight Caledonian accent, evidenced by flashes of tartan amongst the furnishings. "I'm glad you're back as well, Professor McGonagall," Harry added, touching a fingertip to a huge dried thistlehead, a bunch of which stood proudly in a tall urn to one side of the head teacher's desk. "I'm worried there are some difficult times ahead. We've captured the ringleader and a couple of her henchmen, who will be going on trial in the next few days. It seems, though, there are still a few more reheated Death Eaters, as Ambrose called them, at large. It's not fully clear yet what their capabilities are. And then there are all the rumours and anti-Muggle feelings which have been spread around," Hermione added. "It feels as though we've been set back a dozen years or more," she sighed.
"Well, we've had plenty of practice dealing with that sort of thing,"
said Hagrid as he stroked the chicken he was cradling in his huge hands.
"The spirit of Dumbledore's army is still strong. And the kids—"
"Students, please, Professor Hagrid," McGonagall corrected. "You are not working for that American anymore. We must uphold standards." She turned to Lydia, inclined her head and smiled. "Young lady," she said, "I believe from what Mr. Potter has told me that we all have a lot to thank you for. I do like it when a girl is the brains of the outfit. Don't I, Mr. Weasley?" Ron scowled. Hermione turned away to hide a smile. "And," the head teacher continued, focusing on Lydia once more, "you are now a part of the magical community. So I fully expect to see you joining us here at Hogwarts in the near future." It sounded like a pronouncement. Lydia grinned from ear to ear. Harry shuffled his feet. "You too, sir." She inclined her head towards Ambrose. "We owe you both a great debt. I'm sure you have found it rather strange, but you have shown us all how magical and non-magical citizens can work together." "It is an uncommon honour for us to meet you, Professor McGonagall," Ambrose replied. "We have heard much about you on many occasions from the others." "Oh, I'm sure you have," she said wryly. "Quite what you heard, I'm not so sure." "We were informed that you fought valiantly in the Battle of Hogwarts," Ambrose replied. "Many did," she said simply. A moment's silence followed. "So," Ambrose ventured, "is it still necessary that I should have my memory rearranged?" "I shouldn't imagine so, Mr. Ward," McGonagall assured him. "As we Lydia will be attending Hogwarts, I expect you will be treated as any other close relative of a student here, as well as her parents." "I only have a mother," Lydia informed her. "When is your 11th birthday, Lydia?" McGonagall smiled warmly. "This September, the 5th, she replied. McGonagall frowned and turned to Kingsley Shacklebolt. "I know this is unconventional, Minister, but I would desperately like Lydia to join us here at Hogwarts this September. Strictly speaking, she misses out by a few days, but under the circumstances, I would have thought it best that she—"
"I am in agreement with you, Minerva," the minister said in his deep and solemn voice. "From what I have heard, Lydia is bright and conscientious. She will make a fine addition to the student body here."
McGonagall wore a satisfied smile. Several conversations and reminiscences broke out between those present. Kingsley Shacklebolt took Hermione to one side.
"Hermione, I would like to be able to retire one day. That means I will need a replacement. I am not talking about anything immediate. We're looking 5 or 10 years into the future. By the end of that time, I would like to be retired. And I would like to have an honest, intelligent person that I can recommend to take over from me. The appointment is not mine to make, of course. It will depend on the votes of all. But you are well known. and you are popular. Even those who may not particularly like you know that you are honest and clever. I have spoken in private to Mr. Ward. He has made me aware of his many observations. My conclusion is that there are difficult times ahead. We will need someone who understands the Muggle world, who understands the wizarding world, and who people can trust and look up to. We need someone who can think clearly in difficult circumstances. Shacklebolt looked her in the eyes and nodded. It seems to me that you fit these criteria admirably. With my guidance, you will be able to assimilate the knowledge and skills you will need in such a way that people are aware of your abilities. Please, Hermione, will you consider what I have said? Of course, one side effect of being minister is that you will be in charge of the Aura's office and everyone in it, he added with a pointed look at Ron. Hermione smiled. I don't think that will be a problem, Minister. Shacklebolt laughed with a hearty boom.